Hello darling, this is book 16 and it might as well turn out to be the longest of its series, so I might as well get started because look at the pile. First one, for a while, right after reading it, I actually considered having a video on this one book alone, but then I thought let's not just set a precedent here because then I'm going to be screwed in the next book I love. Anyway, if we are friends on Facebook as well, you might have seen a message I posted there a few weeks ago, probably now, regarding this book because I was so enthralled by it. This is One Day by David Nichols, came out in 2009. What's amazing about this book is that, yes, it's a love story, but it's told with a brilliant idea. Him and her meet on the night of the 15th July 1988, and we follow them for the 20 following years every 15th of July. And what happens, what is said or written, or what happens, fills us in on what has happened in the previous year. I know some may say this is just a love story, but William Shakespeare said there are only three main reasons why humans do what they do, and those reasons are power, money, and love. And yes, it's probably not high poetic literature, but it's poetic nonetheless, and the fact that it's contemporary doesn't make it less important. I truly think this is going to be a classic one day. One day, my god. Anyway, I suggest you read this as soon as possible, especially because on July the 8th, 2011, the movie opens, and if you have already read it, maybe on your own or following my suggestion, you might agree with me when I'm saying that I'm not positive Miss Hathaway is going to be a very good M. M, to me, is a very complex character, and she's so opinionated, and these very strong ideas that she carries along with her influence her, both blessing and cursing her, mind you, but still, they're very heavy ideas and opinions again, and I'm not sure Miss Hathaway's face can actually portray that all. Dex is played by Jim Sturgis, whom I really like physically, but I think I would have preferred someone with a slightly more sly appearance. Like, I would perfectly picture Cillian Murphy in the role. But anyway, I'm skipping ahead, so until July we don't have to worry about this. I just hope you give this one a chance. Next, since I had been so incredibly moved by this one, I instantly jumped on another book by the same author. It's Starter for 10. Came out previously, 2003. This is a story of Brian Jackson, who is obsessed with knowledge. He wants to know it all because, quite reasonably, he thinks knowledge is power. This one has already been turned into a movie, came out in 2006. Same title, obviously, Starter for 10, and it's played marvelously by James McAvoy. I really liked it. And if you'd like me to, I'd maybe have a short video review on the movie on its own, because I don't want to mix the two things. Now, the point of Starter for 10 is growing, shame, dealing with new things and especially new people, and developing into what you're supposed to be, which normally is very different from what you thought you wanted to be. I found this slightly harder than One Day because the point is, Brian Jackson makes a fool of himself all the time, and these shitty situations happen mostly because of him. It's his fault, really, because he's so nervous and anxious that he gets himself into these horrid moments. And somehow the moments of redemption are not as strong as the humiliation ones. But then there's a moment in the book when you just can't put it down. I mean, it was like this for me anyway. I think it's a book that tells you, yes, you'll be ill at ease for most of your life, but life really, and who you really are, is what you make out of these moments. So it's reassuring in a way, and I dare anyone to read one or both of these last books, these David Nichols books, and not find something that they have thought themselves, because the very vivid and lucid insight into people's minds of these, to me, are almost unprecedented. And this is probably why these books mean so much to me. This one has nothing to do with the previous books and nothing to share with the ones that follow. Anyway, it's John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, you know I'm obsessed with this, and it's Letters from Father Christmas. It's a collection of letters written and illustrated by him in 30 years' time, starting on Christmas Eve in 1920 up to 1942. It was done for his children, exactly like Mr. Bliss was. And it's lovely because it's a series of adventures and misadventures of Father Christmas, his helpers, the North Polar Bear. This one first came out in 1976. It was called The Father Christmas Letters, and it had many letters and drawings omitted. And then the second wife of Christopher Tolkien, Belle Tolkien, edited a new edition that came out in 2004, and you'll find all the other letters and drawings added. Jonathan Coe, 2007, this is The Rain Before It Falls. It's a lyrical novel that describes the history of 3 generations of women somehow affected by events in post-war London and rural Shropshire. It's almost apolitical, which is very different from most of the books I've read from him. It's focusing on both welcome and undesirable legacies that parents leave their children. The title actually comes from a tune by jazz composer Michael Gibbs, and it's uttered by a girl, Thea, on a lake. And it doesn't make any sense, but Thea's emotions actually capture those feelings of suspension right before the storm, and that urge that you get, that you have to run and hide. On that lake, a great love is about to come to an end. The great love involved Rosamond and Rebecca, 2 young ladies who try and defy conventions in England in the 50s. The point of the book is that it's 20 pictures that are described by Rosamond on 4 tapes, a lot of whiskey and some diazepam, and this all heirloom goes to her niece, Jill, who has the mission to find Thea's daughter, who has been blind since she was 3, so that she can know her story, her history, know their story and their history. It's a book about where do people come from. And again, I found it very different because it's much more emotional and melancholic than the others I've read of Jonathan Coe's. Dan Rose, this is Little Hands Clapping, came out in 2010. Obviously the title is a line from Peter Piper. It's the story of a bizarre German museum that's dedicated to suicide, and it's located in a narrow street in an unidentified city. It has a grim, thin, grey curator whose ambition in life was to get as close as possible to getting paid for being unconscious. And he enjoys a spider snack once in a while. The museum has a shocking secret, and there are so many characters. The cleaner, who's sure she's condemned to hell, a suicidal Portuguese student, a woman who's been shocked speechless and can now communicate only by pressing piano keys, and thus is confined to words that include no letter on the alphabet beyond G. It's for cynical idealists and idealistic cynics alike. It's a magical mixture of the quaint, the sweet, and the unpleasant. He's been compared to Boccaccio and the Brothers Grimm, and actually it has a sense of whimsicality and macabre that actually made me think of Terry Pratchett. He's roused to eloquence by loneliness and the ways to overcome it. His monsters are such because they have wounded or broken hearts, and he knows it. So he's very gentle towards his monsters, like Tim Burton would be, or Lemony Snicket probably. I had already read something by Matthew Pearl. It was The Pose Shadow, if I remember correctly. Anyway, this is The Dante Club. It was the debut. It came out in 2003. It's a mystery novel, and it's involving a series of murders in the American Civil War era, and a club of poets who are translating the Divine Comedy. In doing so, they notice parallels between the murders and the punishments described in Dante's Inferno. The plot is largely fictional, and although the main characters are real people, many biographical details are fictional as well. All the supporting and background characters are also mostly fictional, but somehow I found this more enjoyable than the Post Shadows, especially I think for the way it's written, which is bizarre really, because if I were to choose between Dante and Edgar Allan Poe, unwillingly I'd pick Edgar Allan Poe, but I actually like this one better. This was such a surprise. It's Tom Holt, Blonde Bombshell. He's from London, and he normally writes mythopoietic novels where mythology, literature, and history develop in new, often humorous ways. When he plays it cool, he goes under the name of Thomas Holt and writes proper historical novels, actually cashing in on the fact that his true name is Thomas Charles Lewis Holt. There are high levels of absurdity, almost Douglas Adamsy levels, that always keep the reader guessing, but never completely shatter the suspension of disbelief. The humor is sometimes sly and sometimes it's impossible to miss. The point is there's a race of canid aliens called Oster that are driven mad by the noise pollution coming from another planet, Earth. So the only reasonable decision is to bomb Earth into oblivion. It's a comedy of errors involving a ridiculously smart bomb, an alcoholic human, a couple of misplaced oysters, a multitude of dead octopi, a unicorn, and entities that are made solely of pure text. Now, just with this said, you probably may understand why I really like this book, but there's more. There are several plots that tie in together. It's quick, it's witty, it's funny, and it's sad sometimes. The characters are not always likable, but the great thing is that they're somewhat ordinary individuals that, through unordinary circumstances, get to see a completely different view of the very large universe and their small part in it. He manages to be sarcastic and satirical, but never mean nor petty. This book gets you deeper into the idea of how absurd war truly is, especially when it comes to bombs as solutions. It also brings up a very interesting new use for octopi. This next book is something that, I'm not gonna lie, seriously pissed me off. I bought it because of the cover, and you know, I sometimes run into masterpieces and sometimes I don't. This is one of the latter. It's Anne Brasher's, I guess. My Name is Memory came out in 2010. We already know it's going to be a trilogy, and obviously rights for a movie have already been sold. She is the same author of The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and this is a story about eternal love and reincarnation. The point is there's a he, Daniel, and a she, her first name is Sophia, who are meant to be together because they're soulmates, but somehow it's really hard for them to. Daniel has the capacity and the ability to remember all his previous lives, whereas Sophia doesn't. So in every different era, Daniel has to find her, woo her all over again, and maybe manage to get together. Now, the idea of traveling through lifetimes trying to right the wrongs is fascinating. It's not original, but anyway, one of the main problems, and beware because I've found a lot, is that it probably has the worst kind of open ending in the history of writing humans. I should have known, really. I should have read the back because it said calling out Twilight fans. Now, I've said this many times. I don't entirely despise Twilight. I think anything that gets many people to read is good. But let's call things with their name. It's not literature. It's like, I don't know, it's fun fiction. To me, it doesn't have any poetic value, if that makes any sense. This is possibly even worse because it's standing on Twilight's shoulder and calling itself tall. Many problems that I found in Twilight are in here as well. So you're standing on its shoulder, but you're not learning from its mistakes. Like there's no substance or reason to their attraction. The only word that's used in that circumstance is beautiful. So is the main reason why you desperately fall in love for her and look for her in so many different lifetimes, it's because she's cute? Really? Characters are not interesting. Flat antagonist. Oh my god. Irrational hatred is very annoying in real life and even more so in books. The sexual tension is pathetic. Daniel's experience through many lifetimes doesn't really make any sense because when it comes to woo her, he knows nothing on how to handle a woman. And then some decision-making and guilty conscience processes just don't make any sense. They're just plain boring and tedious. You would like to, I don't know, grab his collar, slap him in the face, and just get over it. And I hate, actually, that this book, I don't know elsewhere, but especially in Italy, is so much publicized when I'm sure there are so many better books out there. In case you've made the same mistake I did, here's McSweeney's. This is number 22. I just wanted to show it to you like I normally do. It looks like a regular book, but it's actually 3 different little books that are kept together by tiny magnets. And the last one, it's poetry. And I found that extremely lovely because it showed me that do not despair, not everything has been said yet. By the way, I hope you've already checked out McSweeney's application. It should cost around £4, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Literature and it's brilliant, especially if you, I don't know, if you commute or something. It's really good because it has updates almost daily, so it's lovely and very well done, obviously. And then, in case you need some extra consolation, this is Martin and Simon Toseland, 365 Everyday Games and Pastimes, and it's exactly what the title says. It's just a collection of pastimes, tricks, nursery rhymes. It's really, really lovely. It's something that every little boy or girl should have and actually use on a rainy afternoon. And again, under the header Proud Britons, this is Sorry I'm British. It's an insider's guide to Britain from A to Z. And from my point of view, it's been extremely helpful. I actually couldn't find the name of this in English. It should be something really simple like The Hug. It's written by David Grossman and illustrated by Michael Rovner. I'm guessing you'd pronounce this Michael, even if it's no E. Anyway, the drawings are really, really simple. I'm not even sure they're colored, but pencils nonetheless. They're really naive. And the story, I mean, it's not technically a story, it's extremely short, and it probably could have been more expanded. They could have chosen to go deeper, but didn't. And the result is a very quick and warm and human affection. It's just like a hug. If you've seen, I think it was the previous video to this one, lately I tend to read books about science. Not that they explain really science, but about science. And this is another one of those. Richard Panic, The 4% Universe. It's not a book about known facts regarding the nature of the universe, so much as a book about the process by which those facts were determined and became accepted. And it's a fascinating and messy story. Science, somehow unexpectedly, it's exciting, and rivalries are compelling. The title obviously comes from the fact that 4% of the universe consists of the matter that makes up me, you, everything around us, every star and planet, and the rest, who knows? Anyway, this is an epic story brought to life, and I found this really, really enjoyable. This is going to be tricky. This is Mishima, Runaway Horses. It's the second of 4, The Sea of Fertility. The first one, Spring Snow, Runaway Horses, The Temple of Dawn, and The Decay of the Angel that composed the tetralogy. Whether you think he were a turbulent, deranged exhibitionist or the last martyr of romantic melancholy, indisputably he was a terrific writer, and I think this one is the peak of his form. Each of the novels of the tetralogy depicts what Shigekuni Honda, I so hope I'm reading this right, comes to believe are successive reincarnations of his cool friend, and Honda's attempt to deal with karma. Mishima is normally focusing on very precise descriptions of his characters' feelings and thoughts, but into this one, history and political passion find more space. Those radical ideals he's going to die for find form into this one. It's a desperate fight against progress. It's about the charm of heroes, whether you look back to them or if you think you're witnessing one. Speaking of melancholy, this is Robert Burton. Some Anatomies of Melancholy came out in 1621. It's presented as a medical textbook in which Burton applies his vast and varied learning But it's actually a much more eccentric work of literature on the subject of melancholy. He was an obsessive rewriter of his work. 5 revised and expanded editions of this one were published during his lifetime and survive today still because no original manuscript has. Early editions can be found included in online sources such as the Project Gutenberg, so you'll find all the links in the doobly-doo. I'm now calling it the doobly-doo in honor to John Green, obviously. If you don't know who John Green is, please close this video and go watch his. Romanticism again. This is Michael Ferber, came out in 2005. You can find it free online, which is absolutely brilliant to me. Again, link down below. It's aimed at general readership, obviously, but in no ways compromises the solid scholarly work that lays behind it. It's very interesting, albeit extremely thin. And it has another flaw, unfortunately. When speaking about romantic paintings, they printed them in black and white. So if you want to read this one, I suggest that you obviously go and watch the paintings in all their glory, in colors, obviously. Last is The Hippopotamus by Stephen Fry. Now, reading Stephen Fry is a challenge because he's so smart and so literate that personally my brain has to go that extra mile to follow his train of thought. So it's always a profound pleasure to read him. With this one, I had a problem because the moral of this story, to me, is absolutely brilliant and brave, but I didn't like where it springs from. The main idea, to me, sometimes feels like he's trying to shock on purpose. Now, I've read a couple of autobiographies of his, so I can go and be arrogant enough to say that probably I understand why he chose those basic elements to put this book together, but I don't really like them. That's it. Well, darling, if you've come this far, you've made it, because I'm done. These are all the books that I wanted to talk to you about, but that's quite a lot, isn't it? Look at the pile, how tall it is. Anyway, you'll find all the links that are going to be useful to you in the doobly-doo, all the links that you may use to write to me. If you've read or intend to read any or all of the books I've spoken about, please tell me how's it going, and if you're liking as I have, or for once, if you're hating them as I did. And as usual, I hope this wasn't much of a bore, that maybe I managed to give you some suggestions or something. And I always forget to say, you can find this same video in Italian on Bluebeam's channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!